I'm not an extravagant liver. I'm not stockpiling cars and diamonds and stuff like that.
Hollywood has always been a city of carefully constructed illusions, of glamour polished to perfection, of love stories written for the cameras, and of women who smile through storms no one else can see. But every so often, someone steps forward and pulls back the curtain. Someone decides that the truth matters more than the myth. Ali McGraw did exactly that. And when she did, the world stopped to listen. She was, by every measure, one of the most luminous women to ever grace the silver screen. In the early 1970s, her name alone could fill theaters. Her face launched magazine covers. Her performances drew tears from audiences around the world. She had arrived in Hollywood not as a manufactured starlet but as something rarer, a woman of genuine intelligence, quiet intensity, and undeniable screen presence. Critics adored her. Studios wanted her. The public felt something close to love for her. And then, without warning, she was gone. 4 years, fans wondered what happened. Where did Ali McGraw go? Why did one of Hollywood's brightest stars simply vanish at the very height of her fame? The answer, when it finally came, was not the kind anyone expected. It wasn't burnout. It wasn't a falling out with the studios. It was a man. It was a choice. And it was an affair so consuming, so total in its impact, that it rewrote the entire trajectory of her life. The story she has since shared, in interviews, in reflections, in rare moments of startling honesty, is one of passion, sacrifice, identity, and the long, painful road back to oneself. To understand what Ali McGraw lost, you first have to understand what she had built. Born in Pound Ridge, New York, in 1939, Ali did not arrive in Hollywood through the usual channels. She studied art history at Wellesley College, worked as a fashion photographer's assistant, and gradually carved her way into the industry through talent and determination rather than luck or connections. Her breakthrough came in 1969 with Goodbye, Columbus, a film that announced her as a force to be reckoned with, sharp, real, and utterly magnetic on screen. Then came Love Story in 1970, and everything changed. The film became a cultural phenomenon. Her portrayal of Jenny Cavallari broke hearts across the globe and earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. Overnight, Ali McGraw became one of the most recognizable women in the world. She graced the cover of Time magazine. She was voted the top female box office star of the year. And behind the scenes, she was married to Robert Evans, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, the head of Paramount Pictures, the man who had championed her career and believed in her talent from the beginning. On paper, her life was extraordinary. In reality, it was about to be detonated from within. In 1971, Ali McGraw was cast opposite Steve McQueen in The Getaway, a gritty, fast-paced action film directed by Sam Peckinpah. It should have been just another professional engagement, a talented actress stepping into a well-crafted role alongside one of the era's biggest male stars. Instead, it became the moment that changed everything. Steve McQueen was unlike anyone Ali had ever encountered. He walked into a room and altered the atmosphere simply by being present. There was something in the way he carried himself, unhurried, unbothered, dangerous in a way that felt entirely genuine, that made every polished Hollywood man pale by comparison. He wasn't performing toughness. He lived it. He had come up hard, surviving an unstable childhood, a reform school, and years of struggle before Hollywood discovered what audiences would eventually worship. By the time he met Ali, he was the king of cool in every sense of the phrase. And he knew exactly the effect he had on people. Ali has spoken about their first real meeting with a candor that is almost startling. She has described the immediate, overwhelming sense that she was in trouble, that something in her recognized something in him, and that whatever followed would not be small or manageable or safe. The chemistry between them on set was the kind that directors pray for and actors rarely find. It translated through the camera in ways that made The Getaway crackle with energy. But what was happening off-camera was far more consequential. The affair began during production. It was, by Ali's own account, not a slow build but a collision, sudden, irresistible, and utterly disregarding of the life she had carefully constructed. She was a married woman. She was at the peak of her professional power. She had everything to lose. And she walked toward it anyway. When the news broke that Ali McGraw had left Robert Evans for Steve McQueen, Hollywood was genuinely shocked. Evans was not simply a husband. He was her professional foundation, the architect of much of her success, a man who had loved her with a devotion that was well known. He had brought her into the world of serious Hollywood filmmaking and stood beside her as she ascended to its highest levels. To leave him was not just a personal decision. It was a statement. And the statement was this: passion had overruled everything. Ollie has reflected on that choice many times in the decades since, and her reflections are not those of a woman without regret, but neither are they those of a woman who pretends she could have chosen differently. She has described leaving Evans as an emotional surrender rather than a rational decision, something that came from a deep and overwhelming place inside her that she did not fully understand at the time. She simply followed Steve McQueen. She dropped the life she had built, the career that was flourishing, and the marriage to one of Hollywood's most powerful men, and she walked into the unknown. What fans found so stunning when she later spoke openly about this period was not the affair itself. Hollywood has never been short on those, but the totality of what she gave up in its wake. Ollie McGra did not simply change husbands. She changed identities. She stepped away from the cameras, turned down film offers, and retreated into a domestic life constructed almost entirely around McQueen's needs, his preferences, and his deeply ingrained need for control. Steve McQueen married Ollie in 1973, and they settled into a beachfront home in Malibu that seemed, to the outside world, like a romantic retreat. The reality was considerably more complicated. McQueen had always rejected the more performative aspects of Hollywood stardom. He wanted privacy, simplicity, and a life lived on his own terms. These were qualities that Ollie had initially found deeply attractive, a relief, even, from the relentless machinery of fame. But McQueen's desire for simplicity was inseparable from his need for dominance, and within that Malibu home, the balance of power was never truly equal. Ollie has spoken with remarkable frankness about what her daily life looked like during those years. She cooked. She cleaned. She made herself small. She invented, as she has put it, a version of herself that she believed McQueen wanted, quieter, less ambitious, less visible. The woman who had been celebrated for her presence, her talent, and her singular screen energy gradually disappeared into the rhythms of a domestic life that bore almost no resemblance to who she had been. She turned down film offers. She removed herself from the Hollywood conversation entirely. And she did it all because the relationship, volatile and consuming as it was, demanded nothing less than total immersion. McQueen's emotional wounds ran deep. He had been abandoned by his father as an infant and shuffled through an unstable childhood that left him with a profound mistrust of intimacy and a compulsive need to control his immediate environment. In romantic relationships, this manifested as jealousy, possessiveness, and a suffocating double standard. He policed Ali's interactions with other men while maintaining his own freedoms without apology. She navigated his moods with the careful precision of someone walking through a minefield, adjusting her words, her behavior, and her very personality to avoid triggering his insecurities. Both of them drank heavily during those years, and alcohol transformed their beach sanctuary into a battleground. What had begun as a passionate love story descended into patterns of conflict, emotional withdrawal, and mutual damage that no amount of affection could repair. Perhaps the most haunting part of Ollie McGra's story, the part that has most deeply moved the fans who have followed her journey, is not the dramatic elements of the affair or the volatile marriage, but the quiet and methodical erasure of identity that took place during those years. She did not disappear overnight. She faded gradually, compromising piece by piece until the woman in the mirror was a stranger. Ollie has said that from the very beginning of her relationship with McQueen, she never truly showed him who she was. That admission carries enormous weight. It means that even in her most passionate moments, even in the depths of what she experienced as consuming love, she was performing. She was giving him a version of herself carefully edited to gain and maintain his approval. And in doing so, she lost access to the authentic version of herself for years. The Hollywood that had celebrated her moved on. Industry doors that had been wide open began to close, not because she had fallen from grace, but simply because she had made herself absent for too long. When she eventually left McQueen in 1977, she did not walk back into a thriving career. She walked into a silence that echoed with everything she had sacrificed. The marriage ended in 1977, the divorce finalized in 1978. By then, both had been altered beyond recognition by their years together. The separation brought relief, but it was immediately complicated by grief. Grief for what the relationship had been at its best, and grief for everything it had cost at its worst. Then, in 1979, Steve McQueen was diagnosed with pleural mesothelioma, a rare and aggressive cancer linked to asbestos exposure. He died in November 1980 at just 50 years old, seeking experimental treatment in Mexico in his final weeks. Ollie has spoken about his death with a grief that surprised even her in its intensity. They had been apart for years. The relationship had wounded her in ways she was still only beginning to understand. And yet his death closed a door that she had, somewhere beneath the surface, hoped might still be opened. There was no resolution. No final conversation. No chance for the complicated feelings between them to find their proper resting place. There was never really closure, she has said, and those 5 words carry the